Thank you. I have a dream. I have a dream of a world in which women's safety is always assured, where their knowledge, skills and talents can not only develop fully, but they can flourish, be put to good effect, and be lauded by all. I also have a dream where men fully embrace a woman's right to live her life exactly as she chooses and willingly support the notion of gender equality for the benefits that it brings to all of society. Ladies and gentlemen, in exactly 3 weeks, my membership of the Over 60s Club will be confirmed. Because it's a bit of a big one, this last year has been a very pivotal year for me. Turning 60 for me has caused a period of significant reflection about my life, my reason for being, my life's worth, and my personal challenge to leave the world in a better place than what I've found. So also during that period of reflection, I thought about the relentless breakthroughs in technology that occurred during my lifetime. Many of those have improved living standards, and many of them haven't. But as far as I can see, those breakthroughs really need to keep on coming if we're going to address the environmental, economic, and social justice issues facing the world today. Now, I'm going to make an assumption that we will manage those things. I'm quietly confident that we will. But I do wonder at the world we're leaving our future generations in terms of behavioural perspective. Will it be a world in which people act decently towards each other simply because they finally realise that that's the best way to get things done, as opposed to hatred and violence? Will it be an egalitarian world in which people are treated equally regardless of where they're born, the school they attend, the amount of money in their pocket, or their personal features such as skin colour, sexual orientation, religion or gender? I'm going to make a bold assumption, or if I was to make a bold assumption that these inequalities would also be gone in our new world, would that be setting the bar too high? Or is that quite a reasonable expectation for a modern civilised world? So, if you're wondering about how my birthday reflections actually went, let me just take one issue that resonates with me personally. Not surprisingly, that's gender equality. Why does it resonate with me? Because in my lifetime I've seen way too many instances of women's inequality, ranging from basic unfairness to outright injustice and violence. Despite the prejudice, however, I've seen women rise up every day above that prejudice. They amaze me with their capacity to continue to do what they've always done, basically laying foundations of love, support, and gentle direction for future generations. I actually find it very inspiring. And that might just explain why the gratitude that I feel for the women in my life actually knows no bounds. I refer to my late mother, my wife, my 7 sisters, and my many friends, female friends and acquaintances. I actually feel compelled to repay them for the support that they've shown me over a lifetime and to actually pay it forward to others in some small way. Now, I don't want to give you the impression that I'm a saint. I'm actually extremely embarrassed to say I'm not blameless either. In the same way that good people allow evil to thrive by looking the other way, I too could have done more to improve this over my lifetime. Once, nearly 30 years ago, I was in a team that let down a female colleague of ours very badly. We allowed our opinion of her to be swayed by unsubstantiated gossip and innuendo. It really wasn't nice, folks, and we really should have known much better. But I'm sorry to say her career actually did suffer a little as a result of that. And do you know what? That 30 years ago excuse that I just used was just that, a very lame excuse. I failed her because I lacked the courage to stand up to the other folks there on her behalf, and I'm not at all proud of it. So my shame at my shortcomings, my horror at the photos that my friend posted on Facebook after she had been viciously bashed by her now former partner, my disgust at the Me Too revelations, and my journey in the latter stages of my life have all coalesced in my mind during my period of reflection too. So, the final result of that reflection? At 60, I had one of those if not now, then when moments. I have now, as a result of that, committed myself to the gender equality movement as an unofficial male advocate for the cause. but with a very specific focus on women's safety and their absolute right to make their own life choices. Of course, if personal atonement at my weaknesses and paying it forward were my only motives for doing this, that would be very self-serving. Why? Because gender equality is worthy of my support regardless of all of that. It is the right thing to do from so many perspectives: natural justice, the potential economic growth benefits that could come from it, and from improving social, family and community welfare. So how do I become an effective advocate on behalf of women? Do I simply conclude from the Me Too movement that it's actually not that easy for a woman to live the life of her choice in safety today and accept that? Or should I do more? I chose the latter, to better understand women's thoughts on how they live with the issues they face every day. Sorry about that. So, my hope was that by following that sort of an approach, I might actually be able to support the cause better. Stay out of the way when I'm not needed, because let's face it, that will happen. Avoid patronising women, which is never a good thing. And all the while without marginalising men either, because, let's face it, I am one, and we are all in this boat together. So, I conducted a women's-only survey which touched on topics such as women's safety, discrimination, work-life balance and other matters. It was never intended to be peer review research, but the results have been instructive. As you might expect with a survey, there were aggregations of thought, but there were outlier comments as well. I'll give you one example. There was a lady who questioned my motives entirely. She counselled me against man hate, and she said that gender equality already exists. So, including her, I am very grateful to everybody who took part in my survey. So, gentlemen, what do you think these ladies had to say? I can't give you all the feedback, of course, but I do have some feedback for you. Firstly, on average, they reported feeling physically unsafe on at least 5 occasions in the last month. They felt marginalised or treated unfairly by virtue of their gender, actually a little more than that. Now, some of the women reported no instances of either of these issues, but there were some others that reported some really scary numbers, and that's really what worries me. Gentlemen, many of the women who completed this survey for me were from this region. So it is quite possible that your partners, daughters, colleagues, or friends could actually be facing this sort of anxiety on a daily basis. Now, I know we each make our own value judgments in life, but are you not horrified that your partner could actually be frightened to move freely around her own neighbourhood? And that's in a relatively safe place like Australia. Of course, you may take comfort from the fact that they're very conscious of the risks and they mitigate them against them every day. As far as I'm concerned, though, the greatest disappointment of all is that that should even be necessary at all. And gentlemen, what of your daughter? The apple of your eye that you've raised from birth and you told could achieve anything that she set her mind to, and on whose brilliant education you spent a small fortune. Would you be upset if she were appointed on a lower starting salary than a man? Or could you perhaps be a little angry after a few years if she had already resigned herself to being considered less promotable than a man, no matter how good she is? And could you be even slightly more angry again if you knew that her work output, its quality, and her work ethic were actually all better than the man who was promoted? And let's not forget for a moment the possible flow-on psychological effects of that discrimination on her relationships and on her possible future contribution to society. Overt instances of inequality like these still happen today. It is not at all uncommon for highly qualified women reporting to men of similar age to themselves, actually where the men has a lower qualification than they have. Now, this is no aspersions on anybody here, but it is possible that some of the men here, myself included, may actually be beneficiaries of this inequality, whether we know it or not, or whether we like it or not. Ladies and gentlemen, 125 years ago, women in South Australia won the right to vote, and that was 18 years ahead of the rest of Australia. The USA will celebrate the centenary of that event later this year as well. So how is it that behaviour as abhorrent as what we saw revealed in the Me Too movement, how is that possible still to take place just 2 years ago, or perhaps even today? Why is it that 50 years after the Equal Pay Act was introduced the notion of equal pay for equal work into Australia, that women's income still stubbornly sits between 14 and 19% below that of men's? Why is it inevitable for a female TV presenter to have to undertake risky facial surgery in order to push back the years and stay in the game, whereas her male counterpart certainly does not? Why is a woman's fair game for criticism but a man's isn't? And why is it that sexual harassment seems to actually be on the increase when you might logically expect it to be otherwise? Ladies and gentlemen, there are so many damning questions and statistics here that addressing all of them may well take this speech into next year. But why is it so? Why is improvement so slow? And why is it so difficult for this situation to evolve beyond what we see today? Why have men like us, allowed this to happen, and why is it still happening today? Well, I have a theory that might explain part of it. We, the privileged, mostly white guys of the world, who have fashioned this place to our liking over centuries, are frightened. We're comfortable being the dominant gender, and we fear being emasculated by the notion of a powerful, capable woman actually being our equal. And we're even more frightened by the notion that one could be promoted above us, regardless of the merit of the promotion. Of course, some people may say we live in a male-dominated society, so just get over it. But hey, this society is no great shakes right now. The myth that men are inherently better than women by virtue of their birth is as misplaced as it is misogynistic, and perpetuating that myth will simply prolong our shame and our pain in society. There are so many dreadful forms of inequality in the world, ladies and gentlemen, and my hope is that they will all soon be overcome. Despite hard-won advances in gender equality over a century, however, when movements such as Me Too can still spring up, it's obvious we have a way to go. Most of the women in the survey believe that gender equality is indeed still possible today, and they overwhelmingly think that male advocates have a big role to play in this. As such, my hope is for a groundswell of courageous, credible male advocates around the world to join in, start talking to women about these matters and working with them to eliminate the gender gaps that they find. Gentlemen here in the audience, I see you all as thinkers, as defined by your attendance at a TEDx event today. So I challenge you to see how you too can make a difference in this world, at home, at work, or anywhere else that you have influence. As an example, when you're next recruiting people for your workplace, could you possibly de-identify the candidate so you don't know what their gender is? That might give you an interesting result for your selection committee. Could you call out sexist talk and locker room banter in your workplace that either belittles women or much worse? And I have heard much worse. Don't expect the guys to thank you though. You might not be their friend for a while, but they may just respect you that little bit more for setting standards that really matter. After all, and they may not think of this often, but they actually have women in their lives too. Ladies and gentlemen, is there a gender bias in your language? Have you ever heard a little boy accused of throwing like a girl? A statement as simple as that actually hurts that boy, potentially destroying his chance at becoming a champion, shows contempt for all girls, and diminishes the speaker all at once. Quite a feat for a little statement, isn't it? Rather than actually being hurtful, maybe we could take a leaf out of my mother's book, and if we've got nothing nice to say, actually say nothing. I'm sure in the end, our boys and our girls will thank you if, ladies and gentlemen, we remove this gender bias from our language today. So ladies, this one's for you. May I ask you to help yourselves too? I have heard some dreadful critical comments by women against other women. As shown, and as I have shown, words really do hurt. I'm not sure I can say this, but I'm going to. Please don't do it. There are lots of women having a go and making advances for themselves and others, so please don't criticise them or pull them down. Applaud them, catch onto their coattails, and you never know where you might end up. Now, all of this may well smack of political correctness to some, but I prefer to just think of it as men maturing a little. Surely we men have it within us to actually share the responsibility for raising our future generations as well. Goodness, with men sharing the load, those generations might end up being better generations. Ladies and gentlemen, these steps that I've outlined here are just small steps. But you never know, they may just be those little things from which big things grow. And maybe, just maybe, my dream might be realised one day after all. And how good would that be? Thank you.